Thank you, Stephen. Okay, over the next 20 minutes or so, allow me to share with you briefly the development of public buses in Singapore. My presentation will be in 4 parts. Oh, sorry, this one. Okay, will be in 4 parts, starting with a background of the bus industry in Singapore, then a short discussion of the current regulatory or territorial-based model, and next some details of the new contracting model, and finally a conclusion describing the challenges ahead. First, background. Like most cities, development of public transport in Singapore is in line with its population and economic growth and urbanization. In the 1960s, there was a proliferation of private bus companies with unregulated operations and planning, all competing for profitable routes which left many areas not served. In 1973, all the bus companies were merged into one company, Singapore Bus Service, or SBS. While efficiency and improvements from economy of scale were reaped, however, by the early 1980s, the increasingly loud public call for competition and more capacity climaxed with the formation of the second bus company, Trans Island Bus Services, or TIPS, in 1983. However, unlike the 1960s, it was a more regulated but still privatized industry model. TIPS was allocated regions and routes in northern Singapore, while SBS provided for the rest of the island. The MRT was started in 1987 under SMRT Limited, bringing into the industry a third rail-only operator in addition to the 2 bus-only operators. SBS was renamed SBS-T or SBS Transit in 2001 after being awarded rail operations. SMRT acquired TIPS in 2004 to provide multimodal competition, bus, rail, and taxi. Hence, a duopoly of 2 multimodal operators with SBS-T having majority share of bus network, while SMRT operates most rail lines. Current PT mode share is about 63% of all peak period trips, with a target of 75% by 2030. The PT ridership trends over the past decade or so show higher growth for rail than bus, consistent with MRT network expansion, i.e. Northeast Line, NEL for short, in 2003, and Circle Line, CCL, in various stages from 2009 to 2012. Bus ridership reversed in 2003 and 2004, owing to network rationalization and shift to the new rail lines. Population grew significantly in 2006, 2008, 2009, and 2012, while overall PT rides correspondingly increased strongly. Rail mode share grew from 26% in 2002, the pie chart, to 44% in 2014, as it becomes more dominant as the backbone of public transport in Singapore. Another set of patronage statistics of 2014 versus 2002, we see that capacity is lacking behind ridership growth. And comparing public transport PT with private vehicles PV, transport policies also balance private vehicles' aspirations. Car usage control measures, including electronic road pricing, which we heard this morning, ERP, has reduced the average annual distance traveled per car from about 20,300 kilometers to about 17,500 kilometers. Car ownership schemes have also moderated the growth in average private cars per 100 residents from 11.2 to 13.9. Basically, the schemes are COE and taxes. Having compared rail and bus ridership, public transport and private vehicles, let's now take a quick look across cities based on research data from LTA. No surprise that Singapore's urban density, looking at the third column, is among the highest among the cities. At 1,261 persons per bus, the fifth column, Singapore's ratio is comparable to other recognized good PT systems, i.e. Hong Kong and London. Singapore's optimization of bus fleet measured by daily bus rides per bus, the seventh column, is in the top 3 together with London. The correlation of buses per million persons and daily bus rides per person, R² of 0.7, suggests that commuter propensity to use public buses is linked to adequate buses for the network. After all, adequate or more buses translate to better service level like peak frequency and more service routes. Hence, potential merits of a supply-oriented rather than a demand-driven approach to provide ample bus capacity to attract greater usage. Singapore's bus network is part of an integrated, efficient, and holistic public transport system. 5 key components of integration are physical, clockwise from the bottom, physical, institutional, network, information, and fare. But in view of the time constraint, I will only quickly touch on the fare integration. Now, fare system, structure, and equipment are integrated across the bus and rail modes, one system. Distance-based fare system has been implemented since July 2010, where inter- and intra-modal transfer penalties have been removed, i.e., there's no boarding charge incurred when you transfer. Commuters pay the same fare for the same distance travel or the same mode of travel, regardless of whether transfers are made. It is a closed fare system. However, transfer rules for a journey apply. So there are some of them written there. In fact, all of them are written there. 45 minutes transfer time limit, journey within 2 hours of the first boarding, single rail trip, you can only travel once on the rail within these 2 hours, and so on. Penalty fare scheme is also in place. Now the EZ-Link card, again, mentioned this morning, is not just for transport use, but it's also for non-transit users as well. Example, credit card, ERP, etc. With all these, Singapore's train and bus fare levels are kept affordable, among the lowest in major world cities. Next, current model. Now, in the current model, operators take risk in cost and revenue. Operators also responsible for bus fleet investment and replacement, and bus depot development, but other infrastructures are funded by the government. Annual fare review process follows a formula pegged to macroeconomic factors determined by the Public Transport Council, such as the price index, and within it, consumer price index, wage index, energy index, and so on. Service provision is on the commercial cost-benefit basis, but coverage of the low-demand areas based on service standards. This reciprocates the territorial allocation to the operators. So you have to do some national service. Current model is territorial-based. Hope you can see that clearly. It's territorial-based with some direct competition along common corridors. So you can see SBS Transit is about, SMRT is about a third of what SBS is. Now, we've compared across cities, we have compared public transport and private vehicles, and we have looked at trends. Let's look at the two operators themselves, SMRT and SBS Transit. They have about even market share overall, MRT plus bus rides. SMRT has higher rail mode share over a few indicators over there, like annual ridership, number of stations, route length. And while SBS is more dominant on buses, again, using somewhat similar indicators of ridership and so on. Arguably, there are economic reasons for duopoly, like economies of scale, capacity of cross subsidies, less, profitable routes, cross-subsidy to less profitable routes. However, public perceptions and expectations of current state not positive for reasons of overcrowding of buses and trains, PTO making healthy profits despite inadequate service quality and yet still justifies annual fare increase, lack of choice and routes, and limited competition. With higher travel demand and population growth, it became urgent to expand infrastructure and improve systems. Hence, government initiatives include further grow, or should I say speed up and confirm the rail network, improve public transport journey time and travel speed, example, service level, rail signaling, bus priority measures, and express bus options, inject more rail capacity, and implement a new gross cost model for public buses. Now, in terms of specifics, it means increase the bus fleet and network through the BSAP program, or the Bus Service Enhancement Program, owing to longer gestation of rail lines. Raise the bus service standards, example, en-route reliability, control and plan bus services centrally through LTA, and increasingly a supply-oriented service provision. In transition to the new gross cost model, the government funded more buses and routes, and enhanced service levels and standards. Between 2012 and 2017, 1,000 new government-funded buses will be injected. Tighter bus service reliability measures like excess wait time and on-time adherence for en-route bus stops need to be complied in the new model. And higher bus service levels, example, peak frequency for BSAP, frequency for BSAP, which will be further raised in the new model. Looking at the average bus fleet and a number of buses, bus routes from 2002 to 2013, we observed the following. Between 2002 and 2004, the bus network rationalization due to now opening, I touched on that earlier. Between 2004 and 2008, bus resources optimization with more service types, both basic and non-basic, introduced to increase ridership. Between 2008 and 2012, the bus demand grows due to higher population growth. And in 2012 onwards, you see a sharper climb. The BSAP accelerated and expanded the bus network and resources. Next, the new model. New model brings greater contestability in bus industry by making public bus services more responsive to changes, injecting more competition, and raising service levels. The GCM, government contracting model, means the LTA determines the routes and service standards. The bus operators tender for the right to operate via the competitive tendering. Bus operators paid service fees with fair revenue retained by the government. The government owns all bus infrastructures and lowering entry barriers for players. So the GCM features and timelines are phased transition, 12 bus packages of about 300 to 500 buses each. Contract period is 5 plus 2 years. First 3 bus packages, or 20% of the total fleet, to be implemented from second half of next year. The 9 bus packages, or the remaining 80% of the total fleet, will be negotiated with the 2 incumbents under the contracting model framework. valid for 5 years from 2016 to 2021. So thereafter, more bus services will be tendered out. Job security and welfare of bus industry workers should be no worse off in the terms and conditions of employment. The two bus packages tendered out, with Tower Transit securing the first package in the west, comprising 3 bus interchanges and 1 bus depot, and the results of the second package in the east is due soon. Some key contract specifications for the GCM are: operate and maintain the buses, fleet management system, ticketing system, bus interchanges, terminals, depots, customer management system, etc., subject to annual service fee adjustments to cater for inflation and changes in wage and fuel costs, subject to service fee deductions for non-operated mileage within operators' control, like bus drivers' absenteeism and so on. Subject to an incentive framework for service quality provision and asset maintenance. Meeting standards, you get awarded up to 10% of annual service fee, while below standards penalized up to 10%. The GCM further enhances service frequency during the 2-hour AM and PM peaks, i.e., about 50% of all bus services to operate at no more than 10 minutes. It's about 30% now, moving to about 35% for BSEP and GCM 50%. All bus services to operate at no more than 15 minutes. So you won't, in theory, you won't wait more than 15 minutes for a bus service. Finally, conclusion. So, challenges for the bus operations going forward include long-term sustainability of GCM. Singapore government generally adverse to handout culture, so that's a big question mark there. Government drawn into micromanagement, also another question mark. Potentially bigger role for buses for rail recovery, breakdowns, and as rail alternatives under normal operations. Meeting increasing commuter expectations, greater security measures and safeguards on public transport. Labor shortage of bus drivers and maintenance technicians. Leveling out the profile of bus drivers and job attractiveness. More buses require more bus priority measures. Lastly, but not least, more bus routes and rail lines mean higher sophistication of service information and journey planning for commuters, such as mobile apps, version 2.0, and so on. So with that, I think I'm within time. I thank you for your attention.